Between client meetings, managing your business, and everyday tasks, who has time to worry about website hosting? With Kinsta's managed WordPress hosting, you don't have to. They handle the technical stuff, delivering lightning-fast load times, enterprise-grade security, and 24/7 365 human-only support. Simply switching to Kinsta could make your site up to 200% faster. Kinsta's custom dashboard makes managing sites easy, with powerful features designed to save you time and effort. Plus, their free expert-led migrations ensure a smooth transition. Ready to see why Kinsta is trusted by thousands of businesses? Get your first month free at kinsta.com. That's KINSTA.com. Kinsta. Simply better hosting.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging. It's often your hormones, too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Coming up on episode 246 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid, the BMW iX, the GMC Sierra AT4X, and Denali Ultimate, and our first drive impressions of the Ford F-150 Lightning. All that and more coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is episode 246 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abu Al-Samad.
From where?
Oh, from Guidehouse Insights.
I'm like, I'm not missing my cue. You haven't finished.
From where?
And I am Nicole Wakeland from the Fast Women podcast on Newsweek.
Fast Women. And I am Roberto Baldwin. This week from Wired magazine, the Bible of technology.
Ooh.
So let's hear from the fast woman in the group first.
I'm first. I hate it when I'm first. It's like getting called on because you sat in the front of the classroom.
That's what you get for being an overachiever.
Dang it. So
if you'd been a little bit slower, it would have been fine.
I know. So I had... Actually, you're going to have to edit this. I was pulling up the thing and I just pulled up the wrong thing. So I have the wrong information in front of me. So you're going to have to pick someone else. Wait a second.
Okay.
I
Robbie,
literally just pulled up the wrong one.
Oh, this past week, I drove the BMW iX, their giant SUV. Their EV SUV. It's never easy to say EV SUV. Or at least it's not easy for me.
EV SUV.
How about just ESUV?
The ESUV.
Ooh, ESUV.
Electric Sport Utility Vehicle. It is their, they introduced the iX and the i4 same time. I did the drive program for both of those vehicles at the same time. I've gotten the vehicles around the same time at my house. So I drove the iX. It is their large SUV. And unlike the i4, which essentially just looks like a 4 Series that happens to be an EV, the iX, from the outside, from the inside, it looks very futuristic-y. That sort of the desire to make sure that your EV looks like it's something different from a gas-powered vehicle. And so that's what they've done with the iX versus the i4. They had the i3. let's all talk about the i3 for a second. The little itty bitty urban EV,
the mega
great
city
little car. Yeah, that's a great little city car that was super polarizing. Americans are like, it's stupid, it's small, it looks weird. It was, they built a concept car. They're like, you know what, let's just build that and send it to people, see if they like it. And some people did, and some people didn't. So with the iX, they sort of still there is a good flavor of that sort of concept-y futurism going on in this vehicle. A lot of crystals. I talked about the little crystal knob and I've talked about the crystal controls for the seats. I think when I did the video for it, like the crystal was shooting rainbows into my eyes while I was driving around Germany. That's a real thing that happened while I was like,
Safety issue.
So the safety issue.
What happened? There was a rainbow. I hit a tree.
A rainbow hit my eye. Taste the rainbow in your eye. So, so it's a large SUV. It's very large. It's very comfortable. I would say it was large and in charge, if you like.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, thank you. It has a 105.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, so it's got a pretty large battery pack. And I had the vehicle with the 22-inch wheels. So the larger the wheels on an EV, the worse the range is. So the 22-inch wheel vehicle, this is the largest, 315 miles of range according to the EPA. The 20-inch one, 324 miles according to the EPA. So with 20-inch wheels, and then they have the 21-inch and it's 305 miles. I got, in the 22-inch vehicle, during my test, a range of 344 miles.
Wow,
yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I was very, very... And
this is going both uphill and downhill, right? Not just downhill all the way?
No, this is uphill and downhill. The Bay Area is very hilly. The route I take has a lot of... There's kind of a steep incline on the freeway. I do 50 miles on the freeway at 70 miles an hour. I set cruise control, and then I do that. And then after that, I drive on some back roads, and I drive through suburbia, essentially. A bunch of small towns, little suburban things, stop and go, just regular driving around town stuff. I figure that's a good sort of slice of what real life driving is. People drive around, they do their 20 miles to work, and then they drive around 20-ish miles and, taking care of stuff, going to Target and, driving down those long, boring suburban roads that sort of meander around manicured lawns. So that's how I do my range test. I do it for all the vehicles the exact same way. I do it in the middle of the day, so there's not a lot of traffic, so the traffic's about the same. And the temperature doesn't fluctuate too much here, so that wasn't really an issue. And I keep the temperature in the vehicle at 70 degrees. I don't have the air conditioning blasting. I don't have the heater blasting, and I turn up the brake, whatever the highest brake regenerative braking is. I'll use that as well, because I figure once people realize, because everyone seems to like one pedal driving, I'll set that up too if it has it, but I just put it on the highest braking, and not eco but normal mode. That's how I do my test. Every vehicle I drive, do the exact same test, the exact same route. It's very boring. Because you're just like sitting there at 70 miles an hour. People are passing you. They're angry. And some vehicles do really, really well, and some do, they'll hit the EPA or they'll be under the EPA. This did really, really well, 344 miles based on a 100-mile loop. So kudos to BMW. I think, overall, a lot of the German automakers, when it comes to their range, they're taking that setting with the EPA test. They're just taking or they're going under. They're like, we'll take the lower number. And it's almost like Disneyland. Disneyland notoriously would say, it's only take 45 minutes from this spot before you get on the ride. The reality is it only took 30 minutes from that spot to get on the ride. But because you thought it was going to be 45 and now it's 30, you're, this is wonderful. They sped it up, or somehow it creates the, you instead of being disappointed, you're like, hey, we got there a lot quicker than we thought we would, which is always nice. So I think that's what a lot of German automakers are doing with range, where they're like, yeah, we only have 15 miles of range. And the reality is they have 320, 325. The vehicle itself, beyond the fact that its range number it's very comfortable. It's very futuristic. There's a new version of, I believe it's iDrive 8, which is nice. They keep updating their infotainment system on a pretty regular clip. Like every few years, they got a new update in there. So good for them on that. They have kept the knob, whereas Mercedes has removed the sort of touchpad knob circle thing. BMW has kept theirs. So if you're a fan of that, it's still there. That area though is all wood. So you have these little buttons there. And my wife didn't know they were buttons. She thought they were just like, what is all this? And she's like changing things. Because they don't look like buttons. They're just sort of raised white
Yeah,
paint.
because when they're not active, the backlight's off, right? So they're backlit and it shows up through the wood veneer, right?
Yeah, they have like a whitish, raised white. It's really, it's sort of odd. And once you get used to it, you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. It looks really pretty. It looks really nice. Again, it's that wood sort of like from the i3 and the thing that BMW's been showing off at CES for years, where your living room is now your car, and sort of the organic world. One thing I do not like about the car are the doors. They're just too. The whole idea where I just want doors with like mechanical handles, like the push button, like. They have it's flat, and you reach under, and there's a button, you push it, and the door opens, and you're like, oh, okay. And then to get out, there's a button where your thumb would go on the handle, so you hit that, and that opens the door. But it's not. There's a mechanical thing underneath, or you can find it and you can pull on that, and I'll do it. But for the most part, it's all this electronic, like hit a button and then the door opens. I just find that just.
Is the door powered?
It doesn't. No, it won't open by itself. You still like it. Okay. It'll like open a little bit, and then you push it the rest.
And you
of the way.
have to push it the rest of the way. It's not going to do all the work for you.
It doesn't do all the work for you, but the door is really big, and it's actually kind of hard to grab the handle when it's all the way open or all the way closed. You're just like, oh man. And I have really long arms. Look, see.
I can vouch. I've seen them in person.
They're very long
arms.
for reasons that are unknown. And even I was like, man, it's kind of a pain. Like you have to like kind of reach back and pull them to close. And I don't know, just it's too much cleverness for its own sake. It's just a I mean, the button is doing what you would do if you were just pulling on a mechanical thing.
But at least it doesn't fold up into the sky.
That's true. I guess you got that. I mean, yeah, but you could still have those as mechanical. Those don't need to be electronic either. Yeah. Those are. I don't know. Anyway, but the overall, the vehicle, it was really nice. It's very comfortable. It is definitely somebody for like a first adopter who wants to sort of show off their EV. Whereas the i4, again, someone could get in that car and they might not even know it's an EV for like the first 15, 20 minutes while you're driving them around. If you're driving on the street and you see an i4, there's nothing really to tell you.
You could easily mistake it for any other 4 Series. Exactly.
It is as far as I'm concerned, it's the best 4 Series. But yeah, whereas the iX is very much like, hey, I'm a little different, and then you get inside and you're like, hey, I'm a lot different. So yeah, the iX for the folks who are looking for a Model X competitor, I would prefer this over the Model X. I've been in the Model X a couple times. Those doors are still a pain in the ass. Those up in the air.
How's that go? One more time.
Up in the air.
Okay.
Like the wings of a fountain on the wings of love.
Well, the range you got off of this thing actually bodes well for the upcoming i7, which has the same 105 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's probably the exact same battery pack, and I think the same electric motors that are in this, because this about 516 horsepower, which I think is what they have in the i7. And BMW, when they did the preview of the i7 last month in New York, they said it would get about 305 miles of range. So, if it does as well overachieving as the iX does, then it'll probably be closer to 340, which would put it, not that far off of where the Mercedes EQS is.
Yeah. No, it's. I think they've done a really great job at sort of. I mean, and I think, like I said, a couple places are the Germans are sort of underreporting on their EPA range. I feel like the i7 is probably gonna do even better. I think we're talking probably 340s. But you're like, everyone wants to be very careful. I mean, the Germans have gotten in a lot of trouble because of
yeah, they
and it's not just Volkswagen.
They got burned a lot bit on that whole diesel thing.
Yeah, almost all of them have done something. It was just Volkswagen did the biggest and the worst. So it was So it's they're working against their own history to make sure that what they're bringing to the world is better for the environment than, say, I don't know, a diesel spewing machine that cheats.
Okay, so how much was the iX that you were driving?
It was all right. The manufacturer MSRP was $83,200. The vehicle I was driving was $101,020. And the biggest expense was the premium package with the multifunctional seats, the interior camera, some iconic sound, parking assistance, live cockpit pro. Yeah, there's just a bunch of stuff that's inside the car and like 3D view. The thing that I still like is the active driving assistance pro. That's $1,700. That's it's hands-free up to 40 miles an hour. When you're in traffic, I still keep my hands on the wheel. I'm currently driving the Mach-E and it has Blue Cruise, and I'm like, I can take my hands off the wheel, and it's automatically I just have my hand on the wheel still. I just can't. It's hard for me to think that, it's hands-free, I can keep my hands off. I was just like, I can keep my hands off, and then without even noticing, blow my hands back on the wheel.
Yeah.
You're not even trying.
I'm not even trying.
I've got an F-150 in the driveway right now with Blue Cruise, and I don't put my hands back on the wheel, but I do keep my hands close to it just in case.
Just in case. Like, whoa.
Because I don't entirely trust it.
It's hard to trust that. It's really hard to trust it.
I'm waiting for the Mercedes Drive Pilot. I've done 2 demos in it, one in Germany, one in LA, where it's hands-free and you don't have to pay attention. It's level 3 and, in certain circumstances on the freeway, blah, blah, blah. And on the track in BMW where I was behind the wheel, looking away, I was like, it's fine because there's all these BMW engineers in the car and we're on a track. And in the real world, I don't know how much I'm going to not pay attention.
There are no BMW engineers sitting by you, so.
I'm sorry, not BMW, Mercedes-Benz engineers.
Or Mercedes, yeah.
Someone's going to yell. I'm going to get an angry email now.
Oh, you've made a terrible mistake.
I made a horrible mistake.
Nicole, what did you drive?
Yes. So I actually was all drive programs all the time this week. I just flew from place to place to place and don't even know what time zone I'm in right now. But I drove the 2022 GMC Sierra 1500 AT4X and Denali Ultimate. So I had new versions of a truck that is not as new.
Well, it's not that old either. I mean,
it's not that old.
A couple years ago.
Right. So these are the 2 new trims of this truck. So the Denali Ultimate, which I keep wanting to call the Ultimate Denali, so instead I'm calling it the Ultimate Denali Ultimate, is the fancy version. Yeah, I feel like that's actually the Ultimate Denali Ultimate.
The extra fancy.
The extra fancy.
You already had a fancy Denali.
Right. Now you have the fancier Denali. So it's kind of funny. Like the Denali Ultimate is the fancier Denali, and the AT4X is the more off-roady AT4. See the theme?
Yep.
So basically with the Denali Ultimate, it's exactly what you think it's going to be. They took all of the upscale, fancier trims, adding a little extra everything, making it your luxury truck, and they made it super luxury truck. They made it ultimate. So a lot of it is the styling. Outside, they have the grille gets its own little chrome treatment. It's called Vader Chrome. I kind of love that because in my head, it's Darth Vader's pickup truck.
Is it spelled like Vader, like Darth Vader?
It is Vader. It's not like some fancy spelling that sounds like Darth Vader. No, it is Vader. It is like, this is his GMC Sierra. So it has Vader Chrome, which is like sort of a smoky kind of chrome, which looks really cool. So it's got its little design elements. It's like, so that's kind of neat. They have inside, You've got like laser etched topographical maps of Mount Denali on the wood trims. You've got it on the leather seats. And the seats are 16-way power adjustable heated and massaging seats.
So it's very ultra luxe.
It's very ultimate, hence the name. So otherwise, it's, underneath it all, it's a Denali. It's a top trim of the Sierra 1500. They've just made it look better. They've upgraded the interior materials. They've upgraded the styling. I really like it. I mean, it's if you're looking for a luxury truck, the downside to this is you can't get the max trailering package with this. So if you want the ultimate in towing and payload, you cannot get it with the ultimate Denali.
You can't put two ultimates together because they cancel each other out, I think is what they're saying.
Is that, I guess that's what happens. Yeah. It's like a net zero kind of situation.
It's probably because I think they use bigger wheels and tires on the
exactly. So you still have an impressive amount. I mean, it's still got the 6.2 liter V8. You can still tow 8,900 pounds, a payload of 2010, and there's a turbo diesel engine you can get, and the turbo diesel is the same payload, but it takes the towing down to 8,800 pounds.
Oh, no.
So, I know, you lose 100 pounds.
But if you're towing long distances, you definitely want the diesel because your fuel economy is going to be way, way, way better.
Exactly. So, suck it up with the 100 pounds of towing that you lose because you're going to want it for other reasons.
Just take a seat out and put it in the bed.
Right. Just take one seat out. Like make someone not ride along. Like, you can't come, you're 100 pounds, get out.
Sorry.
Sorry,
third
Susie,
child.
you get to stay home. Yeah, exactly. Susie, the house is yours for the weekend. And it is like premium pricing. So if you're just getting a Sierra 1500 and you're looking for the base trim of that, you're looking at about $35,000. If you want the Denali Ultimate, you're looking at $81,000. So it's more than double the price of the base trim of this truck, but it is that uber luxurious truck and a very smooth ride. It's basically your luxury truck, and they did a really good job. I got to say, because this is really about style and comfort. That's what the Denali is, and they did that. They nailed it. It looks really good. It doesn't look cheap. They did a very good job, I think, of upgrading it so that there's contrast stitching and there's lots of leather, so it has the style and the look and the comfort you want. That's what you're buying this one for. I mean, there's 100 other configurations you can do and trims if you're looking for just capability and roughness and I want to get some work done. That's not why you're buying this one. You're buying this because you want a luxury truck, and it looks like it. So that was the Denali Ultimate, which I liked very much. I thought it was really good. Your second choice in the mix is the AT4X, which is your off-road version. And they had us take that. Oh my God, you guys, we were off-road for like a week and a half, I think. I felt like I lived in the desert. Like, this is my home now. This little patch of dirt, this rock, this is where I live now. They took us into a desert in like a park, national, or like a state park that was outside of San Diego. It took us about 2 hours to get there. We spent 2.5 hours driving. Then it was like 10 hours of driving for this AT4X. And the off-road part was really cool. They took us to this thing called the Diablo Drop-Off, which is this sort of narrow spot where you drive sort of steeply down, and there's, it's like the uneven. You've got the wheel, one wheel's popping up, the other wheel's popping up. You had to use your lockers. You had to be in 4 low. And you get all the way to the bottom, and there's kind of it's not like you're in dunes, but there's a stretch that feels like a sand dune, that very soft, very deep sand, so that you have to kind of keep your momentum when you're going up the hill, or you're going to be staying in the soft, very deep sand, which another vehicle that wasn't part of our group did and held us up for almost 45 minutes because he was right in the middle of all the things. Oh. So we just sat there waiting. Yeah, he got stuck, and he was with a bunch of buddies. Like, there were like 6 people with Jeeps and
no one had a winch?
Well, I think they were, I don't know if they were all like, you could do it. I'm like, could he do it faster? Because I would really like to be done with the desert at this point.
Can you do it later?
Later? Could you do it not in our way?
Tell you what, we'll pull you out now, and then after we're gone, you can go back into the sand.
You can get stuck right in the same spot and have the joy of getting yourself out. Yeah, but I'm like, does nobody have a tow strap? Like, can we just get him out of the sand, please? So, but so no, the trucks had no problem with it. It was easy to go down that. It was easy to get through, and they aired us down quite a bit. We were at like 15 psi in the tires. So they aired us way down for this stretch of the drive. And we needed it on the sand. We went through a couple of like silt beds too, enough that you had to, like, as the person in front of you went through it, you suddenly had that, whoa, I got anything. So we did some of that. So it was a genuine off-road experience, and the truck handled it fine. You know, this one is the one that's supposed to be your most off-road worthy version of the whole Sierra 1500 lineup. And it has this terrain mode that kind of lets you do like a one pedal off-roading, which is kind of cool, but it's almost too grabby. Like I almost felt like it was grabbing, like it makes it a little hard to control because you have to be so easy on the throttle. And it's like hard enough to do it in the highway, you know, when you're just driving on pavement, but when you're really trying to modulate that throttle driving off-road, it's hard when it grabs. You're like, no, too much. I'm stuck. Like it's a little disconcerting. I feel like it's one of those things, once you play with it enough and you start to get the hang of it and exactly how much it's going to grab the brakes, it would probably be really cool. So and that one is just available with a 6.2 liter V8. You don't have any other choice. That's it. You're going to get that with your 8,900 towing, and your max payload on that is only 1,420. So the max payload is really what drops, not so much the towing. And you get you can still get the fancy multi-pro tailgate with its 6 different positions. Yeah, whatever you want to do with it.
It's a chair. It's a staircase.
Exactly. It's like the Craft Multimatic bed of tailgates.
So, you know, on the Denali Ultimate, you know, for years now, we've been, you know, everybody's been saying that the Ram 1500 has the best interior on any pickup truck. Would you say that this was as good or better?
Oh, gosh, that's tough. Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Okay, let me think. I think, honestly, it's going to be a little bit a matter of your preference here. Like, I think GMC did a really good job of making this feel like a premium truck. It genuinely does. The Ram has more of the, like, I'm a cowboy kind of vibe going on to the interior. I love that. Like, I like that, you know, sort of like, I just moved to Texas. I got me a truck and it's beautiful. And it has that, but in a good, you're laughing, but you know I'm right, Robbie. It does feel like that, doesn't the interior?
I just moved to Texas.
I just moved to Texas. I got me a truck. There's the name of our show. I like the Ram. I think the Ram overall has a bit more of a composed ride, which gives it more of a luxury feel to it, because you know it's the interior and it's the ride quality in a luxury vehicle, truck, sedan, sports car, I don't care what it is. It's the interior and the ride quality. And I feel like Rams is a little bit smoother, a little bit quieter, feels a little bit more like a luxury car in truck form. And I just really like the interiors, like the even the stamped. Which one is it that they have the branded stamp? I think
that's on the Longhorn.
Is it the Longhorn?
The Longhorn.
Where they've literally branded it. So like your branded stamp looks different than mine because it really is a brand. It's not like a pre-printed piece of wood. They brand that sucker. So everyone is a little bit different. I really like that. But the interior of the GMC is like on par with it, with that topographical map and with the quality of the leather and the sort of theming. I just personal preference here. I prefer the Ram, but I think it's going to come down to that in terms of, did they meet them? I think they came up to it. I think they're darn close, but I think the Ram is like a skosh quieter and smoother, and I like the cowboy vibe.
Okay. Did you get to try Super Cruise on the Sierra?
Yes, I tried Super Cruise. We had a very small section of highway, and I tried Super Cruise on the Hummer EV. So this is the second time I've tried the Super Cruise with a new, where it'll like change lanes for you. If you come up on someone who's going a little slow for your speed, it will see like, okay, you can go in the left lane and pass them, and it will essentially do a little pass for you. I mean, I think it's just as good on this as it was on the Hummer. I don't notice a significant difference to me. I mean, Super Cruise is good. That would be that could be reason enough to say, okay, I would do this truck over another luxury truck. Because Super Cruise is really good. You've driven Super Cruise, right, Sam?
Oh yeah, many times, and I drove Super Cruise on a prototype Sierra at the GM Proving Grounds last summer.
Okay.
Before they revealed the new Sierra, we went out there and we got to try it out and try out the auto lane change, and also try it while towing a trailer. So I don't know if you had a chance to do that while
I did
towing.
not. I did not try it with the trailer. They did say you could do that. You tried it with the trailer. How was it?
Yeah, that was good. They do some really clever things with that. So when you're accelerating and braking, it looks at how fast the vehicle actually accelerates versus how much throttle input you're giving it and how much braking input you're giving it. And from that, they kind of back out. They estimate how much the trailer load is. So obviously, the heavier the trailer is, the slower it's going to accelerate for a given amount of throttle input, and then they use that to adjust the gap settings when you're in Super Cruise. So if you've got a heavier trailer on there, it will give you a bigger gap to the vehicle in front of you because it knows it's going to take you longer to slow down or respond. So they did some cool stuff with that. And generally, Super Cruise always works really well. It's very, very consistent, very, very predictable in what it's going to do, unlike Blue Cruise, which we'll talk about next time.
Boy.
I think GM still, of all the hands-free systems I've tried, they still do it the best.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like when you were talking about Robbie, the sort of trusting the system. Is it going to do, like, you kind of want to keep your hands on, like, is it going to do what I think it's going to do? Blue Cruise, I think it does a really good job of mimicking what I would do. So many of them, they stop too soon or they stop too late. They're not going to hit something, but it's just not where I intuitively feel like it should be. Or they go a little further to the left lane or a little further to the right lane. They just don't mimic how I drive enough. I constantly feel like that it's missing something. You don't with Blue Cruise. It really feels like it mimics how you drive. Yeah, I mean Super Cruise, excuse me. It does feel like it mimics how you drive. So you very quickly have confidence in the system and are willing to trust it. Like, okay, this is driving the way I would drive. It's not making me nervous. I can totally trust Super Cruise to do the right thing.
It's interesting because when Super Cruise launched, when the initial drive, the car would stay right in the middle of the lane. And you'd be passing like big rigs, and people were getting nervous because the car was right in the middle of the lane. We automatically, as drivers, like move over a little bit from big rigs, and we don't even realize it. And
right.
So they had to adjust Super Cruise so that we would do that, so that to keep people from feeling nervous when they were coming up to a big rig.
So maybe that's it. So maybe that they've adjusted enough that it mimics the things that maybe we don't need to do that we do as a human. Like, okay, if you're in your lane and he's in his lane.
It tries to do naturalistic driving behavior.
Right, and it does. I think it does. It mimics what you do, whether it makes sense, that going a little bit further to one side to avoid the big rig that is perfectly centered in its lane, and you don't need to move at all, but we do anyway. We'll do that anyway because it makes us all more comfortable. I feel like that whatever it's doing, it's figuring that out enough that it is driving the way I would drive, so I trust it.
Yep. All right. And how much was the AT4X?
Oh, the AT4X it's free. I don't know. Let's see. The AT4X it's actually not that far behind the Denali Ultimate. It still sits right at the top of the lineup because of its off-road, whereas the Denali Ultimate's up there because of its just luxury. So it's $75,700.
Okay.
So it's still right up there. Yeah, it's like about $5,000 less than Denali Ultimate. So pick. You're getting a high-end truck either way. Is it off-roadiness that you want, or is it luxury that you want? Pick one. Although the interior of the AT4X is still really nice. It's a little bit more rugged.
Yeah.
But pick. Am I going to go off-road down Diablo Drop, or am I going to want fancy pants?
I want luxury while I'm going down Diablo Drop.
Well, tough luck, Sam. No.
Wear a fancy hat.
Wear a fancy hat.
This is my fancy off-roading hat.
This is my fancy off-road hat.
All right. I had, excuse me.
Sam's dying.
Yeah. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
I had the Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid limited all-wheel drive. So this is currently kind of the ultimate version of the Tucson, but it's not called ultimate. It's just limited. And this year, is the first year that they've made a plug-in hybrid variant available in here. It's the same system that they have in the Sorento. So basically, essentially the exact same powertrain that's in the Kia Sorento plug-in hybrid. And it's the same basic architecture as the standard hybrid Tucson. The only difference is the plug-in hybrid gets a more powerful motor, electric motor. So the standard hybrid version has a 59 horsepower electric motor. In the plug-in hybrid, you get 90 horsepower, so that it's more capable of driving, just on electric power alone. And the battery pack goes from 1.49 kilowatt hours to 13.8 kilowatt hours. So I took it out and drove it. Oh, and this is all paired with the 1.6 liter turbo and 6-speed automatic transmission that you have in a whole bunch of different Hyundai and Kia vehicles. The 1.6 liter turbo in the hybrid and plug-in hybrid is rated at 180 horsepower, 195 foot-pounds of torque. The total system output in the plug-in hybrid is 261 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque. So it's got more than enough performance. When I did my range test with an electric drive with this thing, it's rated by the EPA at 33 miles of electric range. I actually got 39 miles with it.
Ooh, wow.
Which was quite a surprise. It came up just shy of what I've gotten previously with the Ford Escape plug-in and the Toyota RAV4 Prime, which got like 41 and 42 miles combined, or respectively. Aside from having a plug port on the left rear fender, everything else about this is virtually identical to any other current generation Tucson, for good or ill. For the most part, it's really good. I don't have any really major complaints about the Tucson. This current generation Tucson is a little bit longer, a little bit bigger than the previous generation and prior generations of Tucson. It's almost as big as the last generation Santa Fe was. And the Santa Fe, of course, also grew in size. So it's several inches longer wheelbase. There's more rear seat legroom in this new Tucson. You also have more cargo space available. The battery will charge at up to 7.2 kilowatts when you plug it in. It takes about 2 hours for a full charge if you've fully depleted it. One thing that the EV mode, when you engage the EV mode, it will, unless you're particularly light on the accelerator, it will still sometimes turn on the engine, for anything other than mild acceleration. So you can drive it just on electricity, but if you give it, if you try to accelerate away from a stop, with any kind of aggression at all, the engine will come on briefly, but it'll come on and then it'll shut off again. But it's very seamless in its performance. You can hear it a little bit, and I was watching for it, but it's not noticeable. You won't feel any lurching or anything when the engine starts up or when it shuts down. It's all quite smooth. The overall fuel efficiency, again, it's rated at 42 miles per gallon combined on the EPA rating, and 80 mpge with combined. That's using their combined rating of both running as a hybrid and running as an EV. It's 35 when it's running just in pure hybrid mode. So that's a little bit less than what you get from either the Escape or the RAV4 Prime. I actually got about 33 running in hybrid mode. So it did a little worse in hybrid mode than the label, but it did better in electric mode, which I thought was a little odd. My only significant complaint, I like the design of the new Tucson, especially what they've done with the front lighting, where the daytime running lamps are kind of hidden behind this new grille design that they have, so that when they're off, it just looks like it's kind of black or gray all the way across, and when you turn it on, it lights up from behind, and you see the lights in the corners. So it's a pretty cool effect. But my only complaint about this is the center console. Too many touch controls. They've gotten rid of all the physical controls for climate control, for volume. It's all touch. It's got a really nice screen. The infotainment screen is in typical Hyundai fashion, is really bright, high contrast, easy to read in any lighting conditions. That part works great, but the controls below it are touch controls for volume, for climate, and I'd rather just have either sliders or knobs for some of that stuff, rather than actually have to look at it to do some of this stuff. But everything else about it, the ADAS, Hyundai's ADAS systems always work really well. No complaints there. It does have the latest generation of that stuff, which includes what Hyundai calls their highway drive assist, which is their sort of level 2. It's a hands-on system. It's not a hands-free system, but it does a really good job of lane centering and maintaining the constant distance to the vehicle in front of you. There's 2 trim levels for the plug-in hybrid: the SEL, which starts at $35,400. And the limited is $43,200 with delivery of $1,225. The one I tested was $43,970, so that's $44,000. Is not cheap for a Tucson. Yeah. But because it's a plug-in, you can get federal tax credit on this, and in some states, state incentives as well. I think the federal tax credit on this one, because of the battery size, is about $6,000. So that would, if you opt for the limited, that drops you down to about $38,000 roughly, which is still kind of pricey for what this is. But if you want something that's really efficient and can do most of your driving on electricity alone without using any gas, it's another good option there, along with the RAV4 Prime and the Escape plug-in hybrid, which are similar in size and have similar performance levels. So that is the Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid limited all-wheel drive.
So overall, you like it?
Yeah, I do. I just wish, like I said, that Hyundai had kept some physical controls for the climate and audio volume.
It's just funny because so many of the OEMs that pulled out like every conceivable button and just made it all capacitive, made it all touch
They've
controls.
gone back in the other direction.
They're like, wait, people hate this. Like, give them a volume knob. Like, they don't give you everything you had 15 years ago, but they give you back like some of the key things. The essentials. Yeah. There's some things that it's just easier to use a button or a dial or knob for than it is to be trying to slide something up and down or tap it or touch it.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some of the other stuff. Let's start with this article I found the other day on Ars Technica that was written by some guy named Baldwin.
Oh, he's a jerk.
Oh, I've heard he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
He doesn't know a damn thing about anything.
It's about EVs versus old beaters. So, Mr. Baldwin, tell us all about this article.
So, I wrote an article, and which is better for the environment, your EV or your old beater, and I did a lot of math, which I think everyone should just applaud me for doing a lot of math. I don't want to do math.
Yes, I'm clapping.
It's not like math isn't hard. It's numbers.
Nicely done.
It's just a lot of pieces of paper and calculations, and then doing it again, and then doing it again, because I want to make sure everything is correct. So I talked a little bit about the adjustment factor of EPA ratings. Most automakers, when it comes to EVs, they just use the regular adjustment factor, whereas Tesla and Lucid Air, they use a different adjustment factor because they go on the dynometer a bunch more times. So you can read it all in the article. Then I talked a little bit about the factory impact, like these factories that are building some of these cars that are the most efficient. Some of them are not so great, like the Fremont factory, Tesla's Fremont factory. It's got a lot of, they've gotten in trouble with the EPA a lot about Clean Air Act violations, which is sort of ironic. Consider you're making electric, like we're going to make the air clean, and then the factory's just like blah,
belching out black smoke.
They have a lot of problems with emissions from their paint shop.
Yeah, so they have a lot of and then some of the Lucid is a new company. They haven't really said much. Kia and Hyundai, they've talked about the future, but right now they're not really doing too much. The Chevy Bolt and the Bolt EUV are being built at the Orion plant, which I think is called Plant Zero now.
No, that's the Detroit Hamtramck.
I'm sorry, you're right. That's the different plant. That's where the
and it's Orion, not Orion. Orion plant. We pronounce things weird here in Michigan.
I went to that plant and I wrote an article about it, and I did a whole tour. And I didn't put like lake or whatever. There's like all this. There's another name for the plant that everyone colloquially uses, and I didn't put that in the article. And I got a very angry email from somebody.
Ooh.
And I couldn't access that email, so I couldn't remember what it was because the email was somewhere I worked, and I don't have access to my old work emails. But yeah. Anyway, they use landfill gas to power that factory, and so I talked a little bit about that. The most efficient EVs on the road, according to the EPA, Tesla, Lucid obviously are up there, but also the Chevy Bolt and the Hyundai Kona Electric, which is number 4, which is the car I own. Which makes me feel I know. Makes me feel a little bit better about the vehicle I own. Then I talked about carbon footprint, break-even point, like how long you have to drive an EV versus a gas vehicle of about the same market before it breaks even. EVs have a larger carbon footprint when they're built, and it turns out it's about 1,300 miles. It used to be like 40, and it's getting lower and lower.
1,300 or 13,000?
13,500 miles
Wow.
Was the average. So if you're like, let's say you get the BMW 4 Series and the BMW i4, it's going to be, the i4 is going to have a larger carbon footprint than a regular 4 Series, but after 13,500 miles or so, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, they hit parity when it comes to carbon footprint, because now you're factoring in their, how much they're belching into the real world driving around. And then after that, the i4 will just sort of just keep leaving the force. Yeah, it'll just take off. And so I talked a little bit about that, what happens. And then we come down to what that means for an EV versus your old car, your beater car. This was a huge pain in the ass. Long story short, like talking about, yeah, if you read the article, there's a lot about grams per CO2, vehicles that are 12.5 years or older. It's a long story short, it's about 2 years. You drive your beater for about 2 years, and it'll be more efficient than buying a new EV for 2 years. But then after that, because we're just removing the carbon footprint of its being built, totally, it's gone. We don't count that. I didn't count that at all.
You've completely depreciated that out of the equation.
Yeah, that doesn't count anymore. Okay. So if you have a 10-year-old whatever, if you're driving it for 2 years, and you're driving an EV for 2 years, for the first 2 years, because we're not counting the carbon footprint of that old beater, it's more efficient, quote unquote, has a lower carbon footprint than the EV. But then after 2 years, the EV surpasses it. It hits parity. They both have the same carbon footprint. And then, of course, exponentially, the EV just gets more, better and better for the environment versus the beater, which is still just really bad for, But at the end of it, I talked about it's still really expensive to buy an electric car.
Well, and that, that I think ultimately is the real issue for a lot of people, because most people never actually buy a new car in their lifetime. That most people only buy used cars.
Really?
And, yeah.
The only new cars I've ever had were leases, and I've had 2. And everything else I've ever purchased, like bought a car, were used.
We sell in the U.S. The used car sales outnumber new car sales by about 3 to 1, and the vast majority of people they just can't afford to buy a new car. It's too expensive. So most people only ever buy used cars, and they drive them into the ground and then buy another used car. And so, and I wrote something up for work the other day about this, because there was another article that I saw about California Air Resources Board has been there's a bill in the California Assembly to direct the Air Resources Board to do a study and figure out how to incentivize so-called gas super users to buy EVs instead.
What counts as a gas super user?
So what they found from the Federal the Federal Highway Administration, I think, does a survey every 5 years. The National Household Travel Study, and what they found from the last one in 2017 is that 10% of the vehicles on the road account for 34% of the emissions, or 34% of the fuel of the gasoline used, because those are older cars that are driven, primarily by lower income people, who in many cases also have very long commutes because they can't afford to live close to where they work.
Close to the city where they work.
So they buy cheap older cars that they drive until they're dead, and they, because they're cheap, but they use more fuel and they get driven more miles. And so, how do you create an incentive program for those to get those people into EVs, which I think is actually going to be a real challenge, because if you think about who that demographic is, and in this blog post that I wrote for work, I gave the example of, you look at the area where you live, Robbie, in the Bay Area, a lot of people that work, at relatively low income jobs, in Silicon Valley and San Francisco and so on, have to live out in places like Stockton and Modesto. and have 2 or 3 hour commutes each way to get to work. And they're often they live out in those areas because it's cheaper to live there. They have a cheap car, but they use a lot of gas because they drive a lot of miles with vehicles that aren't as efficient. And there's a good chance that a lot of those people also don't own a home. They rent somewhere, so they're not necessarily going to have access to charging. Because they've got longer commutes. A cheap EV that gets say 100 miles of range might not be adequate for them. So maybe it's better to just get those people into cheap hybrids, like a Maverick or a Hyundai Ioniq or some other or even a entry level Prius that are in the low $20,000 range, and incentivize those instead of EVs, because that might actually be a better solution for those people.
It would make sense, because really, like EVs, even for people who do buy new cars, the prospect of buying an EV that is more expensive than a hybrid, more expensive than a gas car, and you have to buy, go ahead and have some kind of charger installed at your house and this and that. A lot of people are just like, I'm not spending all that money to do this. It's just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot tougher because when you don't have, I grew up like stupid poor. And so you don't have it was weird because someone was like, well, why don't you just buy a new phone? Why don't people just pay full price for a new phone? I'm like, because people don't have that sort of money. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, oh dear.
Yeah.
It's the same thing where you're just buying a cheap car, and even though it's going to cost you more for gas, you don't have the capital saved. You can't save up the capital to buy a new car or to buy a car.
You don't have that kind of disposable income to save.
So you're just going from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. And if you don't live in Modesto or Stockton or whatever, you're typically living in a shared living, you're in an apartment with other people, or you're in a house with a bunch of other people. And, that means there's nowhere to charge. Where are you going to charge? And you don't own the place, so you can't put a charger in. And, if you're lucky, what sucks about the Bay Area is if you, to rent or buy near like a BART station or Caltrain is way more expensive than it is away from public transportation. So unless you live in the city or you live near a bus line, it's super, super expensive to get into the city, because you have to pay, a premium to rent a house or to rent an apartment near a BART. We wanted to buy our house near BART. We couldn't afford it. We're not.
Really?
Yeah, we couldn't afford to live near public transportation because
I never really thought about that, how much that would increase things, because we have terrible public transportation here, so it's never an issue.
yeah, I wanted something close to BART, because I can just get off the plane and get on BART and come straight home.
Right.
And if it's the middle of the day, I'll do that, and my wife will pick me up at BART. But it would have been a lot easier for most of the flights, or most of the times I have to go in the city just to take public transportation. But now I have to get in a car, drive to BART, park it, and then get in the car and then drive. Yeah, there's so many sort of barriers to EVs, and it's going to be a while before the current generation of EVs start hitting. At least 3 years before they start hitting the used car market. So
yeah, there's going to be a while before. Yeah, that's the thing. You can't buy one if you want an used EV. It's you have a very small number of options out there.
Yeah, you're either getting the 100-mile car, the e-Golf,
yeah, that's
or
pretty
the
much
Fiat
it.
500 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you're buying a new car.
Right.
There's very few.
And if your commute is 75, 80, 90 miles each way, 100-mile EV, unless you have, you're not going to. You're going to be really, stretching it thin, and maybe you might have workplace charging, but then you're back to can you charge at home, and it's not always a practical alternative.
Yeah.
So I mean the solution is a lot more complex than just giving some tax breaks to low-income people to buy an EV. What you really need to do is figure out, why do we have these disparities in housing, making housing available in a lot of these more popular areas, and making it more affordable for people so they can live closer. Ideally, it's better if people live closer to where they work. And don't have to have that commute, because that's also a lot of time out of their day, and that means time you can't spend with your kids or whatever.
It's interesting because they're expanding BART here in the Bay Area, but they're expanding it down where a lot of people make a lot of money.
They're helping.
Down to the South Bay.
They're not expanding it up to like Vallejo.
So they're not helping the people that need it the most.
Yeah, so they're sort of expanding it down, even though there's a Caltrain already, but they're not expanding it up to like some of these towns that are don't have the money, they don't have the tech workers, these are just regular working class people who need jobs, and that's where I live. I was like, man, I wish we had BART up here. Meanwhile, they're like, we're running BART all the way to San Jose. I'm like, we already have Caltrain to San Jose. What's going on?
You don't need another train to San Jose.
Yeah, okay, fine. Another train to San Jose, whatever.
Plus, a lot of those companies, a lot of the big companies there also have their own private buses.
Yeah, you get the buses.
For workers
that's a whole issue.
Luxury buses.
Right? Gosh.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, yeah, EVs are cool if you can afford it, and
if you can afford one,
and blah blah blah. Yeah. Anyway, if you can get I'll just keep talking about the Maverick forever. Maverick's a great little car, 40 miles per gallon hybrid. You can do anything you want with it.
Yep. All right. Next up, we've talked before about the chip shortage, and now it turns out that BMW for the last several months has been delivering new vehicles to customers that don't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay compatibility built in yet.
Have they been upfront with it though? Like, do these customers know they're getting that?
I don't know. I'm not sure how upfront they've been. I would assume that they have mentioned something, or certainly customers have probably figured it out pretty quickly. Turns out that they, because of the chip shortage, they actually switched over to a different chip for the infotainment system. So they replaced the chip that they're using, but that required rewriting a bunch of software. And BMW's been a little bit slower on rewriting that, to make, the quote here in the story is the chips built into these cars in the first 4 months of this year needed updated software in order to be fully functional and offer Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and Wi-Fi capability. Said rather than delay the production or hand over these cars until the work on the software update was completed, we've been delivering the cars to customers with the information that Apple, Android, and Wi-Fi will become available via an update by the end of June at the latest. So yeah, they have told customers.
Okay, so people knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it takes time to rewrite the software and validate it and everything. And these vehicles do have over-the-air update capability, so the customers won't have to take these into a dealer to get them reflashed or anything. They'll just get a software update that enables that stuff.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
I think there was I was reading something about another company doing the same thing where like the you'd have a blank if you didn't have heated seats in your car. Well, the button is there for the heated seats. You push it, it does nothing.
Yeah.
That will come later.
It's not connected to anything.
Right. So it's like, this is coming. We'll get you squared away when we can do this. We'll send you to the dealer.
GM's done that on some of their vehicles. They've also done that with heated steering wheels, and most companies have disabled some function or another on vehicles over the last year because they just didn't have the chips for it.
Well, and if you just go, it's like just, writing stories on various cars when I go to confirm things on the OEM site and then go to double check what they have on the consumer site. And almost every consumer site you go to right now, when you go to it, there is a warning somewhere at some point when you're looking at the vehicle, when you're building the vehicle, when you're trying to find out if your dealer has it. It's like, due to supply chain constraints, the vehicle may not be as listed here. Please check the sticker and check with your dealer. So basically, like, look at your exact vehicle. Yeah. See if it has it. Because the blue one might, the red one might not. Choose carefully. Like they really,
Well, and in most cases, the manufacturers have said, as soon as we get the parts, we will give you a call and you can come in and we'll put it in for you.
Yeah.
In this case, BMW actually has the parts, the physical parts. They just didn't have the software. They didn't have the bits to program into it. So it'll be a little easier for them to do the upgrade.
I feel like that would make me less nervous, just saying we have to give you an over-the-air update because some software guy who designs software for BMW, and that's all he's ever done is designing the software. They're just going to beam it to your car. The idea that like something, a physical thing is not right, and they're going to be like, hey, can you take it to Bob's, Chevy or Bob's Ram or whoever? Yeah. They're going to fix that for you. I'm like, I want that from the guy on the assembly line. I don't want that other guy at the dealership who's only done 2 of these in his life doing that to my car. Like that one makes me more nervous,
Yeah. Especially we're more trained to like, you have a new iPhone, but in like 6 months, this software update's going to come out. It's going to do this cool thing. And so our brains are like, oh, okay, yeah, the software is going to fix it.
Like you're used to that. Like software updates happen. Sometimes they don't even work right. To be fair, they blow things up. You're like, don't download it after all. Like, I guess they're just as likely to cause issues. Who hasn't, had that happen when they download an update to their phone or their laptop or whatever. But somehow that I'm okay with. But it makes me nervous to think that I'm just going to have a dealer, even with the right training, the right equipment, the right everything, fixing my heated seats to make them heated because currently the parts aren't in there or whatever.
We got a guy. His name is Phil.
Phil's really good at this. He read this manual. He watched a 2-minute video.
He's already replaced this part on 50 other cars. You're good.
Yeah, you want to be the 51st person. You don't want to be like 1 through 5.
Yeah. What if you're 1 through 5? What if you're number 1? The one time you do not want to be number 1.
All right. Speaking of Apple CarPlay and cars that don't have it, that's something that Tesla owners have never experienced. Tesla has never included any kind of smartphone projection system. No Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto. All their stuff is completely built in-house for their software. But one person decided, no, that's not good enough. I want CarPlay in my Tesla. And so he made it happen. He figured out a way to use the built-in browser that's in Tesla vehicles in the infotainment system, 2 Raspberry Pis, and Linux, and basically having the Android interface being projected into the Wi-Fi. So doing a web server from the Raspberry Pi into the browser on the Tesla infotainment screen, and then running CarPlay on Android, which you can do, and because that's something for vehicles that have Android Automotive, you can get the code for CarPlay, and there's an Android app that you can put on there and run to create to have CarPlay on the screen, and that's what this person did. So they've got CarPlay running on Android in the browser from 2 Raspberry Pis. And he's working on an upgraded version of this that does it with just 1 Raspberry Pi. The responsiveness is not great. It's a little laggy. If you watch the video that's in the story from The Verge will be in the show notes, and you can check out the video and you can see it does work. It's just a little slow.
But it's some of those apps and like Waze. I remember talking to somebody at some automaker years ago about Waze, and they're like, "Yeah, we were wondering if we could like make it native in the car, but it uses so much. It uses far more resources than the car can handle right now."
Yeah.
So I think he'll be able to get it to work. But then as soon as he launches Waze, that Raspberry Pi is just gonna burst into flames.
Well, I bet. Because I think this was in a Model 3 that they did this one. But I think if you actually tried this in one of the new Model S or Model Y or Model X, the upgraded ones, the refreshed ones that they just did that have the horizontal screen, the landscape screen, instead of the old portrait style screen, those things are actually running an AMD SoC. It's basically the same chip that's in a PS5. But
CarPlay is running on the Raspberry Pi, and it's just being shelled in.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just being shelled in essentially using the website.
Yeah. Okay.
But still, the Raspberry Pi that has to take care of all the. They're just going to shove a bunch of GPUs.
Yeah, the Raspberry Pi's got to do all that rendering.
They're going to shove an NVIDIA like Xavier. They're going to get I'm going to go out and buy an NVIDIA Xavier.
You get an NVIDIA Shield. That might do it.
Yeah, and then just shove it onto the end of the Raspberry Pi, and you're good.
All set. Good to go.
Oh, okay. So it is possible to hack your car for good. All right. One more vehicle that Nicole and I drove last week.
Yes.
Finally.
It's not. We could really just skip this. This is kind of a small nothing of a vehicle.
No
it's
one
not
cares.
Important.
Nobody
no one
really
cares about this at all, Sam. I don't even know why this is.
It's just another variant of the F-150. They're everywhere.
Whatever. There's so many. It doesn't even keep track anymore.
Yeah. So we got to drive the F-150 Lightning last week in San Antonio.
That's my lightning sound effect.
And I'll start with the frunk is really big. We on the second morning when we were heading out to do the off-road driving, we had 4 of us in the truck, and we put our 4 carry-on bags plus 2 stuffed backpacks in the frunk, and it was fine. It closed up fine. So you got lots of room in the frunk. What did you think of the Lightning?
What I liked best about the Lightning is that aside from the fact that it's an EV and you have that impressive EV acceleration, it's not an insult. This is a compliment. It's just another F-150. Like, it drives like an F-150. It feels like an F-150. It has capability. It doesn't feel like they tried to do some this is an electric vehicle. It's like, no, we just made an F-150 electric because it does cool stuff. We didn't try to change the whole character of an F-150. It still feels like that pickup truck in all the right ways that people love. That's the best-selling car in the country, or best-selling vehicle. So I liked it. I thought it was really good. I like the base trim better than the what's the top one, the Platinum?
The Platinum, yeah.
I like the base trim better. I don't so the Platinum has these fancy pants seats. I don't know if you played with the seats.
Mm-hmm.
I played with the seats. And it says Platinum and has this extra little thing that's supposed to support your shoulders. And all I could think of was it had wings. It was like the maxi pad of car seats. It had wings. And it had these wings that came around and I'm I don't like
Are
this.
those the same wings are in the Mach-E?
No, they're different.
Okay.
I don't feel like the wings were as robust in the Mach-E. They are robust wings in the Platinum. So it was too much. Actually, and I even like the dashboard. The leather trim in the Platinum, it's like a maybe a 1-inch strip of leather on the dashboard. Which is okay leather, but they have this nice funky texture on the dashboard in the base one. I actually liked the base trim better than the fancy one.
Yeah, and one other difference with the Pro, which is the base trim, is that the Pro is the only one that has the 12-inch landscape display. Mm-hmm. The XLT, the Lariat, and the Platinum all have the 15.5-inch portrait style screen. It's the same screen that's in the Mach-E. Mm-hmm. With the glued on volume knob on the bottom of the screen. It's the same interface that you find in the Mach-E. The Pro has the 12-inch screen that you find on the gas engined Platinum,
which is fine. I'm fine with that screen.
The nice thing about it is, with the big screen, you're back to having the climate controls and everything in the touch interface. Whereas with the 12-inch screen, you still get rotary volume knobs and tuning knobs and climate controls, which, if you drive in the wintertime, you have gloves on, you can operate all that stuff with gloves on, works really well. And some people might like the look of that better. And I agree. I like the look of the XL or the Pro. Sorry,
you like to see. You like I was impressed. There are very few times. I like base trims, or they don't often have base trim, but the lower trims in vehicles, they generally feel and look like lower trims. And this one, I thought, gosh, I'd be totally fine and actually like this better, which is rare. But I think it's part of their strategy too. The pricing has escaped me, but the pricing on the base trim of the F-150 Lightning is not outrageous for a truck.
It starts at $40,000.
Okay, I had 40 in my head and I couldn't remember. So it's $40,000. So you can get into an EV truck for less than $40,000 and it doesn't feel like junk inside. It feels nice. That's impressive. And that gives it, the neat thing about this is it gives it appeal to any kind of truck person. Like truck guys, you've got a truck you can afford. You want a work truck that can do work? It can. You want it to be nice inside? It is. You want to try going with an EV? Hey, you can do it with this. I feel like it really stands to expand the appeal of EVs in a way that other vehicles haven't, because the F-150
it's the best-selling vehicle.
Exactly. So if you can get people, all those best-selling vehicle people, to say, all right, fine, I'll give your EV thing a try. And hey, it drives, it's got that impressive EV acceleration, but it still looks like an F-150 and feels like an F-150 and performs like an F-150. That's something.
If you've ever been in an F-150, you get in this thing and you know exactly where everything is, exactly how everything works.
Well, and
it's all the same, which is part of why they were able to offer it at such a relatively reasonable starting price, because they use all the same parts in the cab, and so they've got huge economies of scale, from building 900,000 a year of these things.
Right. Well, and they talked about how that also means that if you have an F-150 right now and you have accessories that work in the bed, and you've spent a lot of money on random accessories here and there, they didn't want to make it so, well, if you get a Lightning, you got to buy all that stuff again. You can take them off your F-150 and you can put them in the F-150 Lightning. Like, they're compatible, so you don't suddenly, they could have decided to change that. They didn't. And I know it makes sense for them financially from a point, but it also, for consumers, that's fantastic. So whatever you have in your F-150 that you use, however you configure that bed right now, you can do the same thing in the Lightning. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a quieter F-150 that has a very large lockable front storage compartment.
Yep.
And is also a lot faster. It's the fastest F-150 they've ever built.
And the other big thing is that the F-150 Lightning can charge your house. You have to get Ford's little charging things to be able to have it go back and forth between the two. Do the engineering, Sam. So that it can. So
the Charge Station Pro actually comes with any Lightning you get with the extended range battery, with the 300 plus mile battery, comes included with the Charge Station Pro, which is an 80 amp charger. That's 19.2 kilowatts, and then you have, if you want to do the house, the backup, the intelligent power backup, you have to buy the Sunrun home integration box, which has the transfer switch and automatically does the switches back and forth. So as soon as if your power goes out, then it automatically starts pulling power from the truck, and then as soon as your power comes back on, it reverses and goes back the other way. So that home integration box is $3,800.
It's not cheap.
But the charger comes with the truck, and if you get the standard range truck, you can also get that charger. Normally, an 80 amp charger like that usually costs upwards of $2,000. It's only $1,300 if you buy the standard range one and you want to upgrade to that. You can get that for $1,300. So it's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than if you just went on Amazon or went somewhere else and bought an 80 amp charger.
Yeah, most of them are they top out at like 60 or 50.
Yeah, I saw they're like Clipper Creek makes an 80 amp charger, and there's a few others out there, a few other 80s. But I mean, most EVs won't charge that fast on AC anyway. The Lightning has dual onboard chargers to enable that 19 kilowatt charging.
So it's like an 8 and an 11.
Well, it's actually
7
like
point
two
something.
9.2s.
Two 9.2s? All right.
Or 9.6, two 9.6 kilowatt chargers. So that, actually one of the questions that we had that came in from Twitter was from John Halkias. What's the real actual cost to outfit your home to use this vehicle with the intelligent backup power? And does it make sense to use Ford's recommended Sunrun or hire an outside contractor to do the retrofit for it? So the first part, the actual cost, in addition to the truck, $3,800 for the home integration box, and then whatever the installation cost is, which, depending on your home, could run from anywhere from $1,000 to maybe several $1,000s, because to use this, you'd have to have an 80 amp circuit, or actually a 100 amp circuit available for it, because for an 80 amp unit you need a little buffer. So you'd have to have a dedicated 100 amp circuit from your circuit breaker panel, which means you're going to have at least a 200 amp panel in your house. So if you have an older house that only has a 100 amp service, you're going to have to upgrade that to 200 first. So you're going to have to replace your breaker panel. But if you have a 200 amp panel, which most newer vehicles have, or most newer homes have, and you've got enough capacity, you may have to put a new 100 amp breaker in there. So it basically, to do what I recently did, which was have a 50 amp circuit put in, that cost me $700. But for 100 amp, you're probably looking at about $1,000 if that's all you want to do is have the 100 amp charging or the 80 amp charging. And then probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $1,000 to $1,500 to install the Sunrun box in addition to that. So you're looking probably a couple of grand at a minimum for installation.
I feel like the total probably on like, okay, if you're just going to ballpark it, probably $5,000 to $6,000 depending on your house, your configuration, what's already existing for your electrical panel at your house, which is a lot. But at the same time, if you're looking like you're using that, the reason you would want that is so that you can use your truck to power your house, right? So for 3 days, they say no problem. If you're conservative in how you use that power, they say you could get as much as 10 days. So if you're sort of cycling what you're
using.
You
turn off all the excess computers. And
right. Turn off the stuff that isn't like your heat if it's winter or your fridge if it's summer and you're trying to keep your food from going bad. Like if you're conservative. So 10 days. If you get yourself a generator, depending on the size of your house, you can spend $10,000 on a generator to power a good sized house. And so it's not as if like, oh, this is absurd. No, if you're kind of turning your truck into a generator and you're doing it for what, like, yeah, you're like, oh gosh, $5,000, $6,000. But if you put a generator on your house, you're going to spend at least that, if not more. And now you have something it's not like running every month, like if I don't know if everyone lives near somebody who has a generator and they have to run once a month to make sure they're running, and it's always on a Sunday morning at 5 a.m. in my neighborhood, and you hear the like of a generator. You avoid all that, So it sounds expensive.
It just
and
silently switches over.
It just silently switches over, and it seems expensive. And of course, if you can't afford the $6,000, you can't afford it. But if in lieu of getting a generator for your house, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and if you're also looking at putting solar on your home, you can roll all that right into that purchase as well. So that you'll save yourself some headaches there if you're doing all that at the same time. And then the other part of the question was, do you have to use the Sunrun unit? For now, yes, you do. Because the Sunrun box has to communicate with the Ford charger. Eventually, Ford does plan to open that up to other providers, so you will have other options. But for the time being, the Sunrun is the only one that's compatible with this. But
I would totally do it. If I was getting an F-150, I would spring to have that whole situation set up. I would absolutely figure a way to figure that into the cost, because I think we don't lose power generally for huge swaths of time. It's not like we live in someplace where there's hurricanes. But if you live, like I'm in the Northeast, if you lose power for 24 hours and it's 30 degrees out, you are cold.
You get hit by an ice storm that
exactly
knocks some utility poles down.
There have been occasions when we've been out without power, like on in the very many years we've lived here, 2, 3, 4 days. But for the people who don't have any way of generating that power, your pipes are frozen, and now you are spending thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars, and that's every time that happens. If you could avoid that by spending $6,000 when you buy your truck to turn your truck into a makeshift generator, heck yes, I would do that.
Yeah, here in Northern California, summertime they just turn off power. Like, oh, we're gonna have the power off for 12 hours. We're gonna this day. We're gonna have that. We're actually quite lucky. We live near like a switching station, so they don't turn our power off. But our neighbors down the street, their power will just go off all the time. But one of the things when I was looking at for the future is like a second EV is something that has bidirectional charging. That is essentially that you can have, like, maybe if we got a Volkswagen, the ID Buzz, it's gonna got a nice big battery. We're not gonna drive it as much as we do the Kona. So if it's just sitting there, I can charge it during the day, and then have it power goes out. Hey, it's cool because we have this vehicle that runs our house.
Starting this summer, PG&E, which is your utility, Robbie, is starting a test program with both GM and Ford. So this power backup thing we've been talking about, that's all managed entirely locally at your house. So it does the detection of the power outage and switches everything over locally. But what PG&E is going to be testing with GM and Ford is a system. It's part of what they call demand response. So one of the things with demand response today that they do is if you sign up for a demand response program, they can have separate panel for your air conditioning, for example, and they can remotely turn off your air conditioning. So if they're seeing too much load on the grid and they need to lower it down, or rebalance things, they can switch stuff off remotely. What they're going to be doing with GM and Ford EVs is testing demand response using the EVs as power generators for the home. So if the load on the grid is too high, they, instead of doing rolling blackouts, they will just send signals to these vehicles, to these homes that opt in, and say, okay, I'm going to turn off your power, switch over to pulling power from the EV for an hour or two. And they can rotate this around different homes. So you're not off for an extended period of time. You might be off for a couple of hours and then back on, but you'll still have power because you've got your EV. So you won't have a blackout, but it reduces the load on the grid so the utility can get things under control again.
I don't want them turning off my power, though. I can see me coming home like, wait, the air conditioning's off. No!
Well, it's also
but if you've got this EV, your air conditioning will still be on.
Exactly. Yeah. I would still have my AC.
It's just hard for me to trust PG&E about anything.
Well,
I don't think anybody trusts them.
Perfectly legitimate concern.
Yeah.
They have not necessarily proven themselves.
I'm more than happy to reduce my carbon footprint by putting solar panels on my house and using batteries and cars and everything. But so PG&E's like, hey, we want to help. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
You're like, no, you don't.
I can handle it on my own. Thank you.
Yeah, I got this. Thank you.
I got this.
All right. Did you do any towing, Nicole?
I unfortunately did not have an opportunity to do that because they scheduled me very close flights. So I did not get to do any towing.
Okay. Well, I did. I pulled the max tow rating on the Lightning. If you get like the Pro with the extended range battery or the Lariat or the XLT, you can get up to 10,000 pound tow rating. And you can also have a payload capability of up to 2,235 pounds. So I pulled a 9,500 pound winery trailer. We were at a vineyard that had a couple of very large water tanks on there and several wine barrels filled with something, presumably not wine. So it was a 9,500 pound trailer, and I took it on this little drive route, and it barely felt like there was even a trailer attached. I mean, this thing with 775 foot-pounds of torque, this thing just goes, even with that trailer back there. One of the interesting things at the end of the show, I've got a 30-minute interview I did with Darren Palmer, the VP of electric vehicle programs at Ford. One of the things he talked about was we talked earlier about the trailer towing with Super Cruise and how GM's kind of estimating the weight of the trailer on the fly. Ford actually has their bed scales that they're building into F-150s now, so you know how much load you're putting in the bed for the payload, and also a smart trailer hitch, so you know what the tongue weight is. But then the other thing you can do is when you set up your trailer for the first time, they suggest you calibrate it. And basically what you do is you hook up your trailer and then you go and drive 10 miles, and it captures a bunch of data. And the reason it does that is so that for the range estimation, when you put a QR code on the trailer hit on the trailer, and then the camera looks at it, and it automatically will, when it sees the QR code for that trailer that's been calibrated, it will automatically adjust the model for the range estimation. So you can you'll have a more accurate picture of how much actual range you have when you're towing. And one of the other questions we had here was from also from John Halkias. It was how does the towing affect the range? And the question, the answer to that is complicated. It depends on the trailer. If you have a fairly low profile trailer that's basically if the top of the trailer is below the top of the F-150, mm-hmm. the aerodynamic drag, it'll basically be in the wake of the truck, and it won't have nearly as much impact on range. Obviously, the weight will have some impact, but not nearly as much as if you had a tall horse trailer that sticks up above. And so the impact on range can be anywhere from 25%, if you're just towing a smaller trailer with a couple of jet skis on it or, snowmobiles, to, up to 45-50% if you're towing a big horse trailer. So the impact is variable. But if you calibrate the trailer, at least the range estimate you'll see on the cluster should be fairly close to what you'll actually get.
Well, and they said, too, as I remember reading some of this stuff when they were talking about how they're figuring range when you have a trailer hooked up, they're going to be looking at where you're driving and the terrain you're driving in. And they're even going to be comparing that to similar Ford vehicles that were driving similar roads and seeing how that impacted the range. So they're doing a lot to try to give you as accurate as possible an estimate so you're not blindsided with thinking, I have 200 miles. Nope, I had 125. It sounds like it should be a pretty close estimate what they're going to give you there. It seems like it should be pretty good. I mean, we won't know until we all go tow something or till, consumers start towing in the real world and say it was spot on, it was way the heck off. But it seems like they put a lot of effort and a lot of high-tech tools in here to try to make that as accurate as they possibly can in real time.
Yeah. And then, certainly, with all that torque, this thing's got no problem at all with the weight. It's just a question of how much it impacts the range. Mm-hmm. So while we're at this point, why don't we go ahead and, well, I guess one more thing, is the pricing. They start at $40,000. They're shipping to dealers now. That's for the standard range Pro. The fully loaded Platinums that we were driving were about $95,000 all in. You can still get a $7,500 federal tax credit on that, so that gets you down into the mid 80s. But that's still not cheap. Probably an XLT or Lariat. An XLT with the extended range battery is probably the sweet spot. They're all 4-wheel drive standard equipment. There's no rear drive single motor version, and there's no other body configurations, just the Super Crew with the 5.5-foot bed. That's the only configuration, because it turns out that more than 80% of all F-150 buyers, that's the configuration they buy. Very few people actually buy standard cab F-150s anymore, or any other truck for that matter. So that's the only one they're going to offer for the time being. At some point, I wouldn't be surprised if they do offer a standard cab or the extended cab Pro, just only for the fleets. But for now, it's only the one configuration. So there's some other questions we got about the related to the Lightning. So let's go into the Q&A. So Brent Berenshausen asked, obvious question: would you pick it over a Rivian?
Dun dun dun.
Yes.
Why?
Because the Rivian, as cool as Rivian is with this little cargo tunnel and stuff, I like the ability to turn the F-150 into a generator for your house. I like how well it's going to estimate, or it appears to be able to estimate the range, especially when you're towing a trailer. I think the interior and the drive and the feel of the F-150 feels like a traditional truck in all the right ways. So I would pick F-150 Lightning.
I would agree. You've got similar range, 320 and I think 329 for the Rivian. The Lightning's got only slightly less towing capability. The Rivian claims 11,000 pounds versus 10,000, so it's close enough. It's a wash. You've got significantly more payload capability, 2,200 pounds with the Ford. You've got that big frunk, which I think for most people will probably be more useful. I think some people might find the pass-through cargo area behind the cab more useful in the Rivian. I'm not sure if it's long enough. Is it long enough to stick a surfboard in there, Robbie? Do you know?
The pass-through?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the Rivian that runs
it depends
behind
on what
the bed.
I mean, it depends on what you surf. I mean, there's different size surfboards. I mean, if you're riding a longboard, no.
Yeah.
If you're riding something short, if you're riding a fish, I mean, the fish might be too wide. It's it's sort of all over the place. You can throw some snowboards in there though.
Okay.
Yeah, snowboards will be fine.
Okay.
Surfboards are.
But you could fit the snowboards in the front of the F-150 too.
Because it's so stinking huge. Yeah, I feel like the cargo tunnel is a neat idea, and probably it's going to give you some functionality that you don't have in the F-150. But I feel like what you gain is like the times when you really need that pass through are really, really, really small. Like the times you have it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But it's like 99% of the time, you're going to be able to do just fine with a ginormous trunk or frunk on the F-150. You're not necessarily going to need the pass through situation. So that
the
would be
Rivian
enough.
does have the camp kitchen, but
It does. I feel like
$5,000, and you can just buy a camp kitchen for like $150
That's what I was
bucks
gonna
at like
say.
Big Five.
you can buy a camp kitchen and put it in the bed and have like little thing that you can take it in and out and wheels to slide the thing in and out.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time before somebody comes up with a camp kitchen
Or the
that will
frunk.
fit into the frunk of the F-150, and you've got the power there. You've got 4 outlets.
Oh, you could
plug it
just
in.
like slide the
put it
whole
on the-
thing out. It's your whole kitchen. It's just whoosh, slide it out from the front, cook your stuff, whoosh, slide it back.
It's all warm. It starts melting everything.
No, there would have to be some. I was just thinking there has to be a safety thing until it reaches a certain temperature. The latch will not release or some goofy thing.
But I'm sure somebody will come up with that sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Or if not in the front, at least in the back. You could put one in the bed. And, use the 240 volt outlet that's back there. All right. Next, you kind of addressed this already, Nicole, from Paul Cavanaugh.
I know. I realized that I did.
Would the Pro Trim make a good personal vehicle?
And I already said I like the Pro Trim. I think it would. I think this is probably the first time that the base trim of something I really think is the best deal, the best option, unless for some reason you want to go with the fancy. You know, there's in between there's a lot, but I think the Pro Trim makes a lot of sense as a personal vehicle. Yeah, I have no hesitation buying it.
Especially if you get it with the extended range battery.
Mm-hmm.
For commercial users, the 230 mile range is probably going to be fine for a lot of them, like for a landscaper and things like that. But for consumers, you probably would want to order it with the bigger battery. But that's it. The rest. If you've ever been in a base, like an XL trim F-150 in the past, this is a much higher grade trim grade than what those were. It's not just a stripped down hard plastic everything work truck. It still feels nice.
It's the base trim of the Lightning, but think of it more like a mid trim of a typical truck. It's nicer. Yeah. Don't think of it like the base trim of any other truck that you've been in, because they all have a base trim that's just terrific. This isn't like a typical base trim. Think of it more like a mid-range trim, but it happens to be the base for the Lightning.
And you get actual physical buttons for climate control. So
Yep, that's a bonus.
Okay, let's see. We already answered the question about the actual cost for the home power backup.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple of other questions as well. Let's see, from Grant, he asks, maybe more of a question for the next time you interview a Toyota rep, but how did they think it was acceptable for the BZ4X with
Actually, it says BZ4Z. Did you do that typo?
No, that was just a straight copy and paste.
I said it's the worst name. No one gets it right. I'm not picking on you, Grant. I can't either.
No,
I got it wrong in a video. It was supposed to be a joke that I got it wrong, and then I was supposed to have the correct name, and I couldn't figure out the correct name. So the video was just me saying things, and they had to put like a little bug that said it's BZ4X.
Robbie's confused.
So how did they think it was acceptable to deliver the BZ4Z with DC fast charging speeds as slow as they are, at least from what we've seen from early reviews, an otherwise good vehicle with a rather major flaw?
I don't think anybody knows, and I don't think I heard a real answer, because there were questions asked at the launch, and it was kind of like, it's fine, next question. Like, it really wasn't.
It's basically, most of the chargers, most of the DC chargers that are out there are only 150 kilowatts or 120 kilowatts anyway, or less. So you can use all of that, but it's still, especially when you look at what you're getting from Volkswagen or Ford or Hyundai, Kia, 230 kilowatts. VW and Ford, 150. It's just not a it's not
It's
enough.
odd. It's an odd decision.
They should have done more.
I agree.
Ridiculous.
All right. And then the last question from Edgar Diaz. Been listening to this podcast for a few months now, and I'm enjoying it. I really appreciate how you have at least one lady on there, so as not to be overly male in your perspective. It makes a difference.
Thanks, Edgar.
Nicole.
Quick question, and would appreciate your thoughts. My wife and I are thinking of getting an electric car, but it seems that all the new electric cars are tracked by the manufacturer or others. Do you think this is an issue, or is there a way to turn this off? This may make a difference in our purchasing decision.
Oh, well, Edgar, I think you're being tracked everywhere anyway. I think the car is the least of your worries between your phone and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking your phone with you, you're also being tracked.
You're still being,
I think here's the issue. If you're using Google Maps, you're being tracked. Mm-hmm. And you're being tracked for ad dollars. If you're using Apple Maps, you're less likely to be tracked, but you're still being tracked. And that's like every car, to be honest, not just EVs. It's like every car has something, but a lot of it is anonymized because no one wants to get into a big trouble for that.
Right.
If you're using OnStar's tracking you, but you're saying, hey, I want you to track me in case, something breaks down and I want someone to help me. So, I hate saying, everything's tracking you, but everything is kind of, because it's such an easy, nothing matters because everything's tracking you, which is, really not fair because we shouldn't be tracked for absolutely everything we do. You can use, Google Maps without signing in. You can use Apple Maps without signing in. So you can use all these systems without actually creating accounts. And so if you don't have an account, you're less likely to be tracked. They're kind of tracking, they don't know who you are personally. As for your vehicle being tracked, again, it's more. Your biggest concern would probably be OnStar. And that you have to opt in for that, really, for OnStar. And everyone has some sort of tracking. Our Hyundai has something where we can set it up where we know where it's at. But again, the automakers, especially after the GM hack, they're all still a little gun shy. They don't want to be. Whenever you ask them about this, they're like, well, people have to opt in. They're always like, you have to opt in, and it's anonymized. So yes, you're being tracked. They don't know it's you though. They don't know, hey, I know where this car is. I know it's Edgar Diaz. They just know, I know some data about an anonymous vehicle.
It's going to sound weird, but it's almost like sort of, as far as the personal intrusion into what you're doing with your day, it's sort of innocuous because it's not really looking and saying, this is what Edgar does every day. It's just, there's a car and many of them go here. And this, it's not, it doesn't generally record that kind of personal, this is your exact vehicle and this is where you personally drive. It's just like, we have vehicles that drive here.
Whereas Google, if you use Google Maps all the time, that's exactly what it's doing.
Google does. So it's not the car. It's not the OEM. It's not the car and the OEM that are getting your data that I'd be more nervous about. It's more just like, do you use that other stuff on your phone or in your car? Do you use that other stuff? Then they gotcha.
I talked to Polestar and Google about Android Auto, and they said Android Automotive because that is Google, and they said, you can use it without an account if you're concerned about privacy. You don't have to use your Google account to use, Android Automotive in our vehicles. So there's, if you're thinking about a Volvo or a Polestar or anything that's using Android Automotive.
And the same is true for other manufacturers that are bringing out Android Automotive-based systems like GM on the new Sierra and the Hummer and all their new vehicles coming out have Android Automotive. You can use them all without logging in. So you can still, you'll still have Google Maps. It'll know where a vehicle is, but it won't be able to tie it. Well, if you have your phone with you, then Google can probably de-anonymize it and tie it back to you because, they know where the location of your phone. Certainly your cellular carrier knows the location of your phone at all times. But manufacturers do also collect some, well, first of all, virtually all new cars have connectivity built in. And, for manufacturers, it's helpful because, first of all, it's how they're going to be able to do OTA updates. So if you don't ever want OTA updates on your new car, then you can certainly turn off the connectivity. But they can get telemetry data, diagnostic data from your car. So you mentioned, Nicole, that they don't know the type of car. Actually, they know the type of car you're driving, but they don't necessarily know it's you.
Right.
Or they don't really care that it's you.
They don't care.
What they're looking for is patterns in how people use the vehicle, because that's something that they use for debugging problems, but also it's an input that they use in their product development process for the next generation. They want to know, how many miles a day do people drive in these things? Where did they charge? Did they charge at home? Did they charge at public chargers? What kind of chargers are they using? Are they using AC? Are they using DC fast chargers? So they're trying to understand, how the charging experience. Well, and another thing, and this is something I talked to Darren about, is the charging experience. One of the things that Ford does, for example, now is every time you plug in your car, they send back some data to home base. Okay, we had the owner plugged in his car. Did it initiate a charging session correctly? How fast did it charge? How long did it take to start the charging session? If it didn't initiate a fast charging session correctly, and they collect a bunch of other data to try and understand what went wrong. This is part of, when the Mach-E came out last year, there were a lot of complaints from people using, especially Electrify America stations, but also some other public charging stations, about the chargers not starting the charging correctly. And so Ford put in this telemetry data to understand what was going on, so that, if there's a problem with the vehicle, they can fix that. And if it's a problem with the chargers, they can let the charging network operators know and get it fixed. There's certainly very valid privacy concerns, but there's also some very good reasons why it's beneficial, not only to you now, but to the manufacturer and to future EV owners, to share that data to help fix those problems, to diagnose those problems and make the experience better in the future. If you decide you don't want to share any data, you have the option when you get the car of turning off the connectivity. You don't have to. Everybody now gives you usually anywhere from 1 to 5 years of free basic connectivity, so that they can do things like OTA updates and telemetry collection. But if you don't want it, you don't have to agree to the terms of service when you first get in the car. You can have that turned off. So there is a way to turn it off, and that'll turn off the data modem. But be forewarned that you will never get any OTA updates if you do that.
But if you're cool, that's cool. I mean, that's fine. It's also the attack surface. I mean, people for the most part, the average person really shouldn't be concerned too much about. I mean, you should be concerned about tracking, especially if it's not anonymized. But no one's going to go after regular person. They're usually going after politicians, CEOs, people who are doing human rights abuses, people who are wandered by nation states, stuff like that is where it really gets really tricky and weird. The average person is more likely to get swooped up in some sort of major leak. That's where all the stuff happens, is when it's not between your device and a person. It's between that person and the server where all that information is.
That's what I was just going to say. It's going to be somewhere in the cloud where that's more likely to happen.
But you can turn everything off too. And then I have a Subaru BRZ and it has like nothing.
Yeah, I mean my Miata has nothing.
And I drive that around all the time.
The Miata doesn't even have an OBD2 port. Yeah. So. All right. So that's all the questions for this week. Stay tuned right now for the interview I did with Darren Palmer at the Drive. We talked for a little more than half an hour. And Darren had some really good stuff in there. I asked him whether there will be a Lightning Raptor. So stay tuned for his response to that one. We will talk to you next week. And if you were a Patreon supporter, you would have actually had the Darren Palmer interview last week, because I put it in the Patreon feed last week. So if you want to get early access to interviews. I usually put those in the Patreon feed right away, and then we put them in the regular show later on. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Darren, the F-150 Lightning. First time today driving it. It's been almost a year since I had my first exposure to it out at the Romeo Proving Grounds. And I was really impressed with it back then. But give me what was the overall guiding philosophy in creating this vehicle? Because Ford has taken a very different approach with this than your chief competitor, GM, has done with their upcoming Silverado EV. What was the guiding principle with this vehicle?
So the first thing we did within 2 weeks of starting the project, we said to ourselves, actually, do we know who wants an electric truck and why? And we asked ourselves that question, do we know? And when as we were working then in Team Edison, everything was done as a team. We said, actually, we don't really know. No one's done this before. Let's not assume or use some out-of-date surveys where the context may not right. Let's go and speak to people. So within 2 weeks, we went out and I said, let's go to the toughest place we can think of that's currently highly relevant, which was Texas. And we also said, let's go to California because we're likely to find the front edge there of uptake as well. So let's go to the two places. And we went there we made cardboard models. We made specification sheets. In fact, we actually made a brochure.
Models of the vehicle?
Not models of some of the features like the front. And specifications of the vehicle, like it would be a catalogue you would get, and we hadn't designed the thing yet, so we knew roughly what we could do, and we were testing what is important for people. So we took that out, and then we really took people through a human-centered design style experience, because you don't just ask somebody, hey, do you want... But then we explored other features, because we'd already known from our prior research for the other electrics that it's the other elements that bring in. So when an iPhone launched, it was capacitive screen technology that made a new experience. But it was when you put that together with what the product was that made it game-changing. So we said that could be the same. So what can it do? And so it can have a big frunk. It can do bidirectional power. And we were exploring those elements. And again, hey, here's a design, what do you think? You start with what do people do and what are their issues, and you look for where they're using workarounds. This is what human-centered design does. So we actually made models of the front and we asked them, what would you do with this? And that's when we saw some of the magic. So we saw people coming up with what they would do with these fronts, as long as it had power and could carry the weight. And then we saw what they would do with bidirectional. So we saw they were getting very excited about this. And there was the work side, which you would think would be one of the top things, being a truck. And then there was the social side. It was much stronger on the social. What they're going to do with it at home, this front gating, because we could see it was going to be a thing, or putting their precious things in there, or the guy putting his golf clubs in, somebody else putting their, some kind of precious things they have, or the guy was a woodworking, but very ornate, and he would put precious tools in there and things. And so it was someone's own space with power that was theirs, locked away and safe. And we saw that early on. So that plus the bidirectional, we could see there was something special there. And they became things that the truck does that no other product does. And in the end, we learned that with Mach-E as well. The ones that you can only do now with these products, they're the strongest things. Now, when I ask customers, every time I meet customers, I met 175 in an afternoon in Palo Alto. We arranged it. It was going to be for an hour. Well, 4.5 hours later, we're still there, sunburnt. And they were all talking about bidirectional power, Pro Power on Board, and the Mega Power Front. All of them.
Was this more recently, this meeting in Palo Alto?
Yeah, it was maybe 3 months ago. Okay. And I said, let's meet some customers while we're there, and we arranged that. And somebody said, I said, hey, let's just go on social media and ask for the customers. Someone said, hold on, Darren. And they looked at it and said, there's 10,000 people in 10-mile radius. We can't put out social media. You could have a stampede. So we used the dealers to contact some of the customers. And
these are customers that had pre-ordered or pre-registered.
Reservationists, yeah. So they went out for like 1 hour, and they went, "Oh, stop!" Because we were at 200 customers in an hour. We had stopped, so we stopped because we don't want too many people in one place in COVID and so on. And then we hosted them outdoors. We were there for other reasons, and we brought the truck. We said, "Let's just do it." 1 hour, quick meeting. We said. 4 hours later, the team were rushing around getting people drinks and things and getting that into there because they just wouldn't go home, and they were chatting. And the funniest thing I just remember from the whole thing, we were out there much longer than expected. I got a bit sunburned, so did Jason. And just as they were loading the truck, the only time they left is when we loaded the truck to take it away. And as one of them loaded, I heard one of the people say, "Look at it, it's beautiful, isn't it?" I thought, wow, that's really cool. And they arrived, they weren't, I don't know what I expected people to be. They weren't exactly what I expected. They were all people from all walks of life. And, they all had different uses for the truck, but it was using the new things we put into it. And that's when I realised, I saw there, this thing's going to have wide appeal, and that whole price range, which all F-150s have from low 30s up to 90s. It has appeal across the board. So that's very exciting to me to see the customers.
I'm curious, do you know if any of those people were people who had also previously reserved something like the Cybertruck?
Yeah, so I would say half to a third arrived in a Tesla.
Okay.
And that was Palo Alto, so it's a particular area, right?
Sure.
And
Teslas are like Toyota Camrys in Palo Alto.
So they, and they were talking about, they were like, I was asking, what are you going to use it for? And a lot of them were, I want a truck, I use a truck. And I would like to go electric, right? And I just didn't have an option before. So I need a truck, I need to do stuff. And they had other cars like Tesla or others, and they used them, and that's great. But they needed a truck to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And you ask them, like what? Well, like, we always doing things around the home, picking stuff up, pulling stuff, whatever I need to, and that versatility is what these trucks are all about, I can do anything I want. They need to do it. So a lot of them they wanted a truck. Some had reserved others because they just wanted an electric truck. Mm-hmm. Which one's going to come first? Because they really want one. They're all into electric and they want to get out of gas. Of course, some of them own an F-150 because it's the best-selling truck. So, but not as many as you'd think. The electric was a gateway into a new product type for them. So they saw lots of that, and how they're going to use it, and a lot of use of the frunk. A lot of use of bidirectional, especially there combined with solar. A lot of use of Pro Power on board to power things or go camping or whatever, and the bed for whatever they need to do with it, and the payload. So they want to just do whatever they need, and being able to tow.
Yeah. Towing's an interesting use case with EVs because obviously they have tons of torque. So the ability to tow is not an issue, I think, for at least for an electric truck, as long as the vehicle structure accommodates it. But one of the challenges with towing with an EV is the loss of range. And I know in the past, like when Tesla first introduced the Model X, Dan Edmonds, who was at Edmonds at the time, he did a bunch of tests towing a trailer with the Model X, and there have been other EV trailer towing tests. Generally, it's like 40 to 50% reduction in range. How have you addressed that problem of maximizing not just the ability to tow, but how far you can tow and being able to charge when you've got a trailer hooked up and things like that?
Yeah, so a lot of F-150 reservationists, all F-150 drivers, they want the ability to tow. They want the ability to do whatever they want, whenever they want. That's the versatility. So you ask them,
living in Michigan, you go up I-75 or US 23 on any weekend, year-round. You see trucks towing snowmobiles and jet skis and boats. And
if you ask pretty much any F-150 in tender, do you need to tow? The answer is yes. How often do you? You get varying answers, but they want to be able to do it. So we said we want to make sure that everybody who most will be towing for the first time on electric. What I mean is, it will be the first electric vehicle they've towed with. We need to make sure they're covered. What cannot happen is that they set off, they get halfway to their charger and it says you're not going to make it, reroute. This is not what we want to happen. So we spent a lot of time to develop solutions that mean that won't happen. So our goal as a team, I said, I want that when you hook your new trailer and before you leave on the journey, I want the accuracy to be better than 10%. And you're a long-time EV user, you know most EVs are not within 10%. And I want it to be within 10% with a trailer on it. And I asked them, I need solutions that do that. So this truck has a solution where you hook the trailer to the truck. By the way, it helps you set the tongue weight using its weighing scale.
All right.
Then the truck says, hey, I recommend you validate this trailer. What's validate? Drive 10 miles. So you drive off, you drive 10 miles, and it measures the trailer. Can you believe that? And then adjusts its knowledge about that trailer.
So it's measuring things like, how much power is it taking to go this speed?
Yes. What's the drag? Yeah. Every trailer is different. Some have got different brakes that drag in different ways. So it measures the trailer, and then stores that trailer under a certain name, and then it knows about the trailer. Now, so if you could have got a brand new trailer, it says hook, and it tells you, please validate this trailer, and it's a tick box. When you do it, it goes tick, validate. Now, that's a good one. So now, when you say, I want to go on a journey, 600 miles, it uses that trailer. It knows it's connected, and it uses that trailer. And so, it will now adjust the range, depending on what it is. Every trailer is different. This is the trouble. They have different drag, weight, height. When they're not above the height of the cabin, that's good. It's better. It's aerodynamics that gets you with trailers, not the weight. Because we'll use the weight of the trailer in the overrun to charge the vehicle. So the trailers are pretty good because you pull this extra weight when you go downhill, they're going to push the truck, and it uses that for regen. But high speed, it's aerodynamics that get you. So we wanted to make sure we were covering people so they know what they get. So the vehicle will adapt and it will change the available range. When you enter in where you want to go, it will take that into account and it will get you safely to the charge stations. So by now, last time we spoke, it was however many charge stations. Now we're at, charge stations this week? 72,000? Yeah. 70,000. So we're now 70,000. Yeah. It's going up like crazy now because there's a lot of investment from other third parties, and as you know, we chose to do that. So it's now 70,000. So it's going to route you between them. The truck, you may notice, now has new categories. So it actually has a 50 kilowatt. It has AC. We'll be using that on the journey. It has 50 kilowatt, 100, and over 100 now.
Oh, when you're looking for chargers.
So you can say,
so you can filter.
I only want 150, right?
Yeah.
You only want, and you can press that now. The Mackie hasn't got that on yet. You can imagine we might roll that out, right? So, but
talk about the dual onboard chargers as well.
Yes. So you'll see the little faster and faster charging streaks, so you can choose the best. Now, if you select a journey, it's going to choose the best for you anyway, right? And depending on your charging. So, yes, it will reduce charging at some amount, right? I mean, it depends on your trailer, but, a lowish trailer with motorbikes on, it's going to be quite reasonable. It can be 30% more, right? But a big one, a big one's going to take it 40 or 50%.
Yeah,
exactly the same as gas, of course.
So something like the typical snowmobile trailer we see in Michigan all winter long. Yeah. That's relatively low. It's got a sloped front. How much do you think that would generally reduce? Maybe 25, 30%?
It's going to be. I don't want to give you a number because I know that each one's got different brake drag and all that, and that's why it measures. Because otherwise, you say a number, people wonder why they don't get it. It's because has it got electric or hydraulic brakes and all those, and people might not have optimized their trailers yet for electric, right? Over time they can do that. So, but it'll be quite a reasonable drop for these, and then it's up to a lot. If it's a really heavy thing with a big square box and you drive at 75, it's going to drop Like a gas, exactly the same as a gas.
Sure.
But a gas, I know you just put in and
it's a lot easier to fill.
But the truck will tell you, and that's what's super important, because people have no experience yet, very few people, and it's got you covered. So it's going to get you between stations. So, but there is an effect, but you can do what you want. And you said earlier, they're quite good at towing. I mean, they're exceptionally good. So I would do 60 miles an hour and accelerating with a 9,000 pound trailer in gas, and it slowly gains. You do that in an F-150 Lightning, and it goes like stink. Yes, it's using power.
When you have 780 foot-pounds of torque,
it's effortless, right? Yeah. But it uses the power, same as gas does. So, that's a fact of life with electric, right? Yeah. And the other part, you mentioned, people want drive-through charging so they can charge it with a trailer. Well, the big electric charging companies know this, but there's been no one to use them yet, right? Well, now, all of a sudden, there's going to be 150,000 plus of these things a year coming through. They're in business. They know where the money is going to come from, right? Yeah. So and they know you're going to use the power. So they'll start to put them in. They're already talking about it. They know people want charging stations with nice facilities, well lit, safe, and drive-through, at least some drive-through.
Right.
So they know that. They're going to put in what people want, because then they get more money, they generate more money, right? So we know that. We're talking to them about it. We're actually also mapping the country and saying to ourselves, if you assume 230 miles of driving or something, where are the black spots in the country? And then when we find them, we've seen it already, we talk to the company, say, are you putting something there? Who's putting something there? And where we're going to find that someone's not, and you ask them, and it's probably economics, we're going to get into how can we support putting something there? Because if we can map the country with no more than 230 miles between between any charger, you can go anywhere. Okay, so we're working on that as well. Matt Stover's team is doing that and cross-referencing with the charger companies, because if they're already putting something in there, then we're fine, right? But there's bound to be some that are not, and one way or another we can support to get that done. Maybe we club together with somebody else or another car company. It doesn't matter, because we all want this, right? So we're getting into that now. Now that we're getting through launch, we're getting into that as well.
Yeah. Last fall at the Mach-E GT drive, we talked at that time, and you told me about the Charge Angels program.
Yes.
Which a couple of weeks ago, I was at my local EA station down the road from my house, and that I pulled in, there was one of the Mach-Es from the Charge Angels team there testing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Which area?
In Ypsilanti.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So they were there, and I chatted with them for a couple of minutes.
Good.
And so they were going through testing each one of the 6 chargers there, one of which was non-functional at the time. It was
excellent.
It had been non-functional for several days, because I'd been there a couple of days before that, and they were aware of that and were logging that. How's that program going? Does it feel like it's having any impact on your charging network providers?
So it was a fascinating one, because we got them ready, we got them kitted out, we sent them out. They started doing it, we got data immediately. Of course, if it's network related, they can immediately connect to the network. Do you know? Are you fixing it? Because they're going to fix it ultimately. So if they know and they're fixing, that's good news. But we found a load, they're like, we don't see any problem. And our guys said, we need better network analytics to fix this. And we're like, we haven't got the data we want to fix it.
So you're talking about the charging network?
Yeah, well, we're charging it and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we're like, right, now we've got data analytics, get it back to the office. Right, what's going on? Find out we don't have enough data to know what's going on. It's a lot of the protocols are not clear enough, and is it the car or is it the charger? And you could spend a long time trying to work it out. So they actually said, well, we got the wrong equipment. We need different equipment which has network analytics on it. It's like, this is completely different equipment, really expensive, really rare, and we had to order it all. And of course, COVID. You can't get anything. So it took us a while to get it, and then we upgraded all the cars. So they're really unique, and they can now look at all the signals going backwards and forwards. Now when we get the data, what's going on, we can analyse it and find out where. And if we have a discussion with a provider, they're pretty helpful. They go, it's us, it's you. It's like, no, that's exactly what's happening here. And we've had times where they say, well, that's technically the car. And we say, well, who can move fastest? Can you tweak, or we can tweak? Who can do it quickest? and we help each other. Whoever can tweet quickest does it, if we know it's not going to affect any other cars. So it's more about learning, because the problems are never unique. Yeah. It's more about learning, hey, there's this problem out there. Can we detect it? Are we seeing, now we know it's there, can you poll the cars and find, oh look, it's happening in lots of places. What's the fix? Then you get the fix, then you roll it out to either the network or the car. So they don't have to go to every charger in the country to find it. They just keep every unique issue they find, what is it, why, and then you fix it, and it will fix it for the whole network. So I've seen a huge improvement in did not charge. They can't get a charge. That's gone right down. It's really small now. But I still have a section of it charged, but wasn't as clean as we wanted. It wasn't click, walk.
Yeah, it was slow, or it took a couple of tries.
Yeah, and then I find a whole load of it was smooth, but an error got generated and is appearing in my list as troublesome. Turns out it was an error after they unplugged. So it didn't actually affect their charge. And like, that was in our data too. Like, that's not, okay, it's a different data. No, it's actually not that inconvenient because they charge perfectly. So we're still figuring that out. And that's going down to, now we set targets for next year to really get really reliable. And we've had some networks with faulty systems on them. And if they're working well with us, great. But some of them, we found some more bigger issues, and we said, hey, you either get this fixed in 2 days, or we're taking you out of the network. And a couple of them like, well, we can't do it. They're not over-the-air updatable. We said, well, we're taking them all out of the network. We took every charger out of the network so that people don't get sent there. And then it's amazing how fast they start coming back. Right?
Given that this is an issue that is going to impact the entire industry, have there been any conversations, doing some sort of consortium of all the automakers, to work together? It certainly would be easier to scale if you did that. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, you're still at the early stage where all the new cars are coming out, right? So you're going to then mix up all sorts of other issues with the cars, with the network. So we could do more of that, I think. Maybe a bit later we can do it. But at the moment, you're still in kind of gross errors. There's some networks that are a bit old-fashioned. They were there before and they're not powerful enough, and those. And then there's, we only launched a car last year, and we had a few. We were the first plug-in charge as well. It worked pretty good, but there were some issues. So, we should do that. Yeah. But at the moment, we're still launching cars like crazy, and everybody is. So you'll see other manufacturers launch their cars into the networks and also have problems, right? And so, I think there's space for that. We need to do more of that. At the moment, we're just getting on with it. And the Charge Angel program was, I think, the first of its kind and pretty unique too, because you should be able to detect it from a distance and just know and then fix it, but you can't, because if the reader's not working and it's stuck, it should, but it isn't telling you. But you're in the early days of this charging hardware. The hardware is going to upgrade, and I know they're trying to upgrade the hardware, but they're caught up with COVID chip as well, and they can't get the new chargers to put them in. Some makes are better than others. Yeah.
Back to the Lightning again before we finish up. You've taken quite a different approach with the design of the Lightning from what GM is doing with the Silverado EV. Theirs is purpose built, as they say. The Lightning is a lot. Everything down below is purpose built for an electric truck, but the top part is obviously, a lot of it is carryover, which has some significant benefits because you can leverage your economies of scale. What would you say to people that look at the Lightning and say, it's only 300 miles. Silverado is going to have promising 400 miles. And there's different compromises there. Talk about why Ford did the Lightning the way they did, as opposed to taking an approach.
So I started answering it, and I didn't answer it fully actually for you, right? So we went to customers first and worked out what they wanted, and what they wanted an electric truck that can meet their needs of what they do. They wanted bidirectional charging and power, and they wanted mega power funk. They wanted the bed exactly like today. do not touch that bed, because every accessory we've got matches it. They also wanted payload of the truck today and £10,000 plus towing. This is the list of everything they wanted. Also new tech and the latest technology in hands-free and big screens and connection with all their phones and an in-vehicle office and lighting all round and automatic towing and automatic parking, all those things. The truck has all of those things. It has a payload now of 2,225, I think. Correct?
Something.
Went up.
Yeah, that's about right.
2235 payload. It's a truck. Trucks need to carry stuff. £10,000 towing.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah, £10,000.
It's about £1,000 less than that.
Yeah, £10,000 towing, a spare wheel, very, very important for a truck driver, and the frunk. So I would put it to you, the entire bottom of the car that's electric is brand new, completely brand new. The whole front trunk is brand new. The carryover piece is B-pillar back, and they wanted the bed to be exactly the same so it can match. And then because of that scale, we can deliver that at 39,974, and we can deliver it right now. So that's the approach we took, because it delivers everything they want right now. And we've delivered 320 miles now, and we're going to continuously develop and over the air as well for the vehicle. So to do what people needed and to deliver it right now and at the price they wanted, well, I think we're really delighted with everything we've delivered. So that's why we took that approach. The amount of interest we've had, and 200,000 reservations, and that's before anybody touched one. It seems to have struck a chord with America, and it also means a lot of doubters to electric can see their way into it as well. I think what's going to happen, we'll put them in every dealer. The dealer will call people who bought many trucks from them and say, try it. Some of them will say, hey, I'm not interested in that electric. And they'll say, just come try it. And they'll come down, it won't be scary. They'll try it out and they'll see some of the benefits, and then, some of the things they see as faults or problems with electrics, they'll start seeing as, actually I can live with this, right? Because the truth about having an electric, if you have a charger at home, every day's a full tank. And the amount of times you're doing 700 miles in one go is less than daily life. And if you need to, we've got the biggest network in America, and you stop for usually 20 minutes, every 3 hours, charge the thing, get a coffee, because you just plug and walk, get a coffee and get back in. It's going to work for a lot of people's lives. Further generations later, we'll do more things. But this vehicle is, right for right now, and is first to market by a very long time for most people. Yeah. And don't forget, we're launching right at the beginning with the whole range from 39, not just top. Yeah, that's important.
You're not just launching a platinum. That's important. $90,000.
And we're not just retail; it's fleet as well. Yeah. So these things are going to be all over the country in fleets immediately, and as soon as people start using them in fleets, they're going to be addicted. I can tell you that straight away, because the savings are going to be amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure for a lot of fleet users that their use case is predominantly local. They're not doing transcontinental trips every day or every week. This is an ideal vehicle for them, especially when you compare the price against the gas version.
It's insane. And so Ted Canis is running Ford Pro for us. Yeah. He was the original of Edison, and he's doing everything they need to support their business. Because if you've got a business and you need 20 trucks, you need to know the charging infrastructure and have it sorted out. So they acquired Electrify with Murphy to have the solution. So people come to us and say, we can give you a fleet of 20 trucks. Look at the price. And by the way, we can also set up your warehouse to charge these things. And they pointed out, they talked today, if you get it right, you'll see savings of like half running costs. But if you get it wrong, there can be more than gas. And so it's really important that you're set up properly, and that's what Ford Pro does. So Ted's just started going. He just started selling the e-Transit, and we keep finding use cases we never even thought about. And the customers are finding them. So one of them, which just went crazy, is the wine industry. I guess it's obvious when you look back, but the wine industry, we joined with Francis Coppola in his vineyard, and we started showing him what we could do, and we set him up with a full fleet with electric truck and transit, and he just loved it. So immediately pulled more, and then all the other wine producers were like, "What are you doing?" And he showed them, and they're like, "God, we want some of that." And so I can't remember how many wine producers there are in America. Is it 30,000 or 3,000? It's
probably closer to 30.
Yeah, it's a lot. And they're all asking one each other now and saying, "Well, why don't we have that?" Right? He used to have transit vans with diesel underground with the wine vans. Because what other vehicle have you got?
Yeah.
And diesel you can put underground with stage 4, but you don't want it. Mm-hmm. And now got rid of them all electric. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? And they're not even more expensive.
Yeah.
So they've gone crazy. So that's selling like hotcakes. And we're just getting going. I mean, we're just getting going, right? It's just the first 3.
Well, and e-Transit's available in a bunch of different configurations in a regular body.
Because
cutaways.
Customers have to have.
Are we going to see different variants of the Lightning as well?
No, not at the moment. I mean, some people might prefer single cab or something. They might, yeah. But this is what's available now, and the price is fantastic. Some reason they want a single cab is because it's cheaper, but it's so cheap now. We can do that because we have our own configuration.
What about a single motor rear-wheel drive version?
We considered that, and that's something we can do.
Okay.
But we decided, as we launched, we want a simple message. So, how does it compare to gas? Yeah, more powerful. How is it off-road? Yeah, the same or better. And how is it hauling? No problem, in any condition. If you have a single motor, some of those things are a bit less. We didn't want the message getting lessened. With some of them are not as good as gas, and it's just keep it simple. We didn't expect 200,000 reservations. And that's with, you might say, some might prefer rear-wheel drive and some might prefer one single cab. Yes, we've still got 200,000.
Well, I heard that when you first broke ground on REVC, that the initial plan was for 25,000 a year.
We don't share numbers,
but it went to 40 and then 80 and then now 150.
Yeah, it went up a lot.
Yeah,
and that's we knew it would grow over time. That was the plan. But
you didn't realize how short that time period was going to be.
We could sell 200,000 this year.
Yeah.
No one thought that. Even the top in the industry didn't think that. So, and it might, if the product wasn't good enough, it might not have been a hit. So it seems to have captured people's attention. And half to 3/4 will mention bi-directional power when you call them, and at least half or more will mention mega power frunk as the reason they're looking.
Yeah. You got enough source of Samsung or SK going to be able to get you enough batteries?
Yeah, that was a big deal, right? To get the batteries, and our team have achieved that because of the relationship. Like it's going, the batteries will be the new chip shortage, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to have vertical scale, vertical integration, and partnerships to get the batteries. Also, the battery providers are going to know they're in short supply. Who are they going to bet on? Those they know have a good chance, and we use the same batteries, between the Transit and the Mach-E, so that you can mix between. If one's not successful, the other one turns out both are 3 times, but never mind. And then with the truck here and other things, they're going to share. So you can, if one wasn't successful, you can share to the others. But so we're not in that situation at the moment. But one day might be, right. Once we put a lot of capacity in, we can move between different vehicles if needed.
So when's the Raptor Lightning going to launch?
Well, the funny thing is that the Lightning's quicker than any Raptor ever.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about future products, as you know, but we'll look at what next when one at a time. We've put a lot of concentration into this one, getting it there on time. We got the okay to buy, so we got the go. That's on time, completely on time, for a brand new truck. So we're pleased about that. Put a lot of work into that, and we don't mean launching a couple of hundred trucks. We have 2,800 parked, ready to go. We didn't even have the okay to sell.
Yeah.
So that's how we launch. We get them ready, you do final testing, and you go like hell. That's what's going to happen now. So they'll really start flowing. And we've taken the orders in batches to make sure we give people dates, and we can deliver to their dates. We had so much demand on Bronco that we disappointed a few people on the delivery because some of the options, like Sasquatch, manual, we were like much more than we ever expected them to be. So we learned a lesson. and used it for this to make sure we only offer people vehicles they can have and give them dates. So that'll open up again soon. We're the next round.
Last question. Were there any important lessons from Mach-E that you applied to this?
Absolutely loads, yeah. So the most important of all, which is the obvious, but the most important was all, don't assume a damn thing and go and speak to customers real early. Because whatever you think they're going to say is not what they say. That was the earliest, the best one we had from anything. We're using it for every single product. So the other thing I used was develop it in the Edison team to be free, to be fast and free and with a cross-functional group, and then go and shop it around our expert teams. So I mentioned earlier we had an excellent truck proposal with no spare wheel, and we said, hey, probably be okay with no spare. You can use a kit, and maybe they're used more around town, and like big mistake. We shopped that around truck teams, and like, no way, no how, never. And they gave us the stories and all the examples, and it's no good when you're off-road asking for AA, right? It's no good. Just don't do it. So we had to redesign again to get the spare wheel in. They helped us, by the way. So we shopped it around the groups, and they showed us. When we did Mustang Mach-E, we shopped it to the regular Mustang team. And they were like, they told us things we would have forgotten or lost, and said, hey, how about this? They made it better. So we did the same again, and we're going to do it on every truck. Same in the Transit team. And now our next car. So shopping it around our own teams who have experience, once we have the basics, really powerful.
All right. Darren, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a Fresca? How old are you? Okay, got it. The slurp was awesome. That was like you were on a soda commercial. I don't even know how you did.
Fresca.
I got that recorded.
Established in 1966.
Shopify is a global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business and sell more with less effort thanks to the Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/redcircle, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redcircle now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/redcircle.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.